Good morning. It is Wednesday, August 14th. Doing this video talking about what people do. Before I go into that, let me preface this. Just like the seminar, talking about things that typically don't get talked about at seminars, where we were talking about, meet day things, warm up things, just certain mechanics of the day that are never covered. This is really a great topic while it seems simplistic in nature. When you're the week out, to me, the toughest part of the cycle is probably the first week when you're coming off a meet that you get back to training, and then probably the last 2 weeks prior to the meet. Meet week is very difficult because most everybody's, deloading and that sort of thing and traveling. And so what do you do with the time? We for most of us that are competitive lifters or competitive strength athletes, we spend a lot of time socially doing this at my gym, and even my online clients. I have online clients that they've come to my house and stayed. I've got my oldest online client. He and his family stayed with us the week before Christmas. Their son was turning, I want to say 13, and had his birthday here. And they went home like the day before Christmas Eve, So, we have that kind of culture and family type atmosphere at the gym. So it takes up a significant amount of time. I literally spend as much time in the gym at home as I do at my job each week. So if you're in the gym, even if it's an hour and a half, couple of hours, you're spending a significant time. There's a big investment of time, is the example I'm going after here. So when you deload, I've seen deload sessions last 30 minutes, if not less. And so you're left with a lot of idle time. And so ultimately the question comes down to, what do you do that week? Because there's anxiety, anticipation, and stuff like that. And a lot of times when we're idle is when those negative thoughts, kind of come in, and, or anxiety, and you get really nervous. And those can have a negative and detrimental effect on your meet result. So here's some things that I would suggest. This is something that Mel can do, or someone can do for the website, is just have a meet checklist. It's like, what are some things that, that you need to pack, especially if you're traveling? What are some good meet day, foods to have along? And I'm sure those things have already been covered. But one of the things that I like to do is, I like for my training cycles, I like more than most. I usually decide well in advance what meets I'm going to do for the entire year. And so I train accordingly. And so I'll have sometimes 16 and 20 week meet cycles. So each one of those sessions, I have video of my main lifts, and I try to, I review those lifts. The week of the meet, I'm looking at, here are the things that I've worked on. This day was exceptionally good. I study my lifts, and at this point, all the correction work has been done. So I'm studying all the video of where I've done everything right. I'm looking for every type of positive reinforcement that I can. And I try a week out, like for instance, tomorrow, Melissa and I leave for Jacksonville. We have some lifters lifting at the USA Powerlifting's Southeast Regional meet. And so Sunday, I grabbed my 2 travel bags and I started packing. Just typical stuff. Make sure you got plenty of socks, plenty of underwear, plenty of Ogreware t-shirts, all those types of things. And that way I'm ahead of the curve. I'm not one of those people that likes to wait till the last minute to pack. And so I will also always, being a coach and having done several of these meets, I'll make sure I do a Tupperware container, and I put a block of chalk in it. I put that in a Ziploc bag, and I put that in my check-in bag. Any little thing, like I'll put a pair of barbell clips, like the plastic ones that are great to travel with. They're very lightweight, they work really well. And so I try to make sure I have little extra stuff like that. A little baby-sized baby powder, you know. These are always the things that lifters tend to forget. I'll put a couple of golf towels, that way you have them at the meet. You wipe your hands, and, you know, just all that little stuff that you get to the meet and you're like, oh crap, you know, there's nothing is available. And so I always go through that checklist, and then that way, the night before I'm supposed to leave, I can go through my bags, make sure I have everything, and that makes it stress-free. My gym bag, I always carry on. I don't care if it's raw meat, strongman, whatever. I carry that bag on because I have had my baggage lost, and it'd take a day or two to get to me. Or there was one time Melissa and I went to, her family's from El Paso. They lost my bag and said that it went back to Nashville. So I get back to Nashville 3 days later. I have bought clothes and all the things needed while I was gone. And when I get back to Nashville, I check in, and what they had done, the airline had left my bag at the hotel we were staying at. No one had called me, and they had to ship it back to me. So I was at home for a week before I got my luggage. This is also the weekend that I asked Melissa to marry me, because I spoke to her father before and asked permission. And before I gave them my bag, because I was going to carry it on, and the flight was so full they made me check it in, I took her engagement ring out of the bag. So those things can happen. And I'm going to tell you something. When you get to the meet and you ain't got no bag, it's not a good thing. I've seen it happen, and I've seen lifters use borrowed gear, and it's just, you know, it's just a bad situation. So I always check that in. I always carry that on, and make a checklist. Make a checklist in advance. You know, there's so many things that you know, chalk, baby powder. And the other thing is that when you're, what I have found is, like, I like liquid chalk, and, you know, check the rules of your federation. Some don't allow it, but usually you have the little bitty keychain size, and then you have a big one. I was going to Strongman Nationals. I had a big bottle in my bag. I didn't even think anything of it, and they confiscated it. And that's a $20 bottle of liquid chalk. So, you know, think about those things. Get the little travel cases or the little travel size baby powder, that kind of thing. You can always pack extra stuff in your check-in bag. But I always make sure I try to have spare of as much as I can. I generally will carry 2 pairs of shoes. Well, I deadlift in wrestling shoes or slippers, and then I'll have a pair of squat shoes, and I'll have an extra pair. Just something, you know, something can happen. One of the Olympic lifting meets I did, I went to take my shoes off after I got done competing, and the whole sole came off the shoe. There was no indication, thankfully, during the meet, but these are the things that can happen. So I always try to have, you know, an extra pair of wrist wraps, another thing of chalk, baby powder, whatever it is that you use during the meet, I try to have extra, and I'll put that in my check-in bag. And so these are the very things that, you know, save you come game day. But going back, I watch video daily and study the things that I've done right, and I want to positively, you know, impose that on my brain. When I go to bed at night, I visualize. I do use a lot of visualization, and that is a big positive for me. And then take the time to relax. I mean, you're doing a deload, you're still working, and you know, it's a great time to catch up on some rest and those types of things. But I always do things that are going to be positive reinforcement. I study my videos. I, you know, read positive things. I listen to music that for me is uplifting. I think music has the power to really have a positive and beneficial influence on you. And learn to relax. Take advantage of that time and prepare yourself mentally, because ultimately all we're doing is lifting weights. And what you're doing at the meet is you're demonstrating to your, to the people that you lift with and the other competitors and the judges, basically what you've achieved with your training. And so I try to, keep it in mind. It all comes down to execution. It's not about the meet. It's not about the competitors. It's about me doing my job, executing my technique and my form to get the very best lifts that I can and get the very best result. The chips will fall where they may. Of course, I want to win. Of course, I want to break a record. If those things are possible, that's what I want to do. And my training is very goal driven. But at the end of the day, I break it down to its simplest form, and I focus on executing my form. I'm not worried about the weights. All that's been done. I've done all the weights. I've done all the training. I've done all the practicing. All that's done. I am focused simply on what I have to do. Execution, execution, execution. Nothing else matters. And so those are things that you can practice. And with a little bit of time, for you guys that have only competed a couple of times, get out there and compete. When I first started out, I learned really quick that what I needed was experience. So I was always a good squatter. And so I would go in and squat conservatively, go 3 for 3. And then, I struggled a little bit with bench, and my deadlift was mediocre. And I became a pretty decent bencher over that time. And I would push that bench and deadlift, and I could recover from the meets fairly quickly. And that allowed me to get more and more experience. And being successful is a practice. It's people that don't give up on lifts, like you grind. That is something that is learned. It's not a given. And when you practice those things, you become good at them. And I got to the point where I wasn't hitting a PR squat, but I was hitting PR totals because I was getting better and better meet day with my bench and deadlift. So those are some things to think about and run by your coach, and experience counts. So hopefully, this helps some of you, and maybe it raises some questions. And this is the reason why I do these. It's not for me to tell you how much I know. I've just been lucky that I've done this for a really long time, and I've been blessed, and again, very lucky to have had some pretty good results. And I love doing this. So if this sparks some questions and conversation or debate, I'm all for it. Post the questions, message me, message Mel, whatever it takes. And, let's talk about these things, because these are things that you go to a seminar and it's hands-on. Here's my squat, here's my bench, here's my deadlift, and that's the bulk of what we do anyway. But it's the devil is in the details. The real progress is addressing all the fractional things that go on. Like in the seminar, I talked about being in a garage band. You can practice scales and songs, until your fingers fall off. But until you play those notes and those songs and that music in front of people, you're not a musician, you're not an entertainer. And those are the things that it takes to become really good at it. It's the same process with strength. You've got to get in front of judges and compete. Do you have to be a competitive powerlifter to be a powerlifter? No, but if you want to reach your potential or push yourself, that's where it's done. So any questions, any follow-up, I'm happy to do it, and thanks for listening. Have a good day.